Weekly conversation with the 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan joins us. Courtesy of the Human Guest Line, we do it with Kyle every week throughout the Niners season. What's up, Kyle? Happy New Year, man.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
Pretty good, dude. How was the New Year for you?
It was pretty uneventful. I only realized it was because there was bowl games on, but just sitting here, I went out to practice, and Texas was up 24-8, so I thought they were good, and then I came in and heard they barely won.
Oh, yeah.
At least they're on to the next round.
But that's like the most Texas you've watched all year, right?
Yeah. It was only it was only 5 minutes of it just before I went out, but I got to see that Arizona State running back. He was pretty impressive.
Cam Scadaboo.
Yeah, kid's good.
Yeah,
kid's good. Kyle
a win is a win at the end of the day.
Yeah. So we got one going on right now too. The Sugar Bowl's being played right now in New Orleans. So just looking back at last week real quick, 34 points for you guys for the offense. I thought Brock, until the injury, was playing as well as you could have asked, with the exception of a couple of the interceptions. Thought one of them was a little wonky, and one of them was a pretty good play by the defense. When you look at some of the guys who performed well, and Brock included in that game, how'd you feel about the offense on Monday?
I was real happy with those guys. I mean, just it was a challenge going into that game with just some of the O-line issues we had, having to take a couple guys off another team's practice squad and then starting them, which, just hadn't been in that situation before. So it was a huge credit to those guys coming here on Christmas and everything and spending that day just sitting here with some of our assistants and trying to study the language and everything, so they just knew how to kind of what we were asking them to do. So for those guys to kind of not mess up and give us a chance to do that, I thought that was huge. And the guys stepped it up big time, but, the only thing that got us was those 2 turnovers, and they had none. It ended up being one of those games that you knew was going to be a shootout. So that's what I felt it came down to. Whoever protected the ball or got the turnovers at the end was going to win, and they ended up finding a way to do it.
How hard is that? Like, I was thinking about that on Monday when I was out there. Like, you got guys on the O-line who hadn't even been in the building really yet, and they're learning the verbiage and the language like you were talking about. I remember years ago when J.R. Smith got traded to the Cavs late in the season, they were like, well, what are you going to do if you get the ball? You don't know the plays. He said, I'm going to shoot it. But like, as an O-lineman, you can't do that. Like, so how big of a jump is that? How difficult is that for a guy to do? And how much changes for you in your play calling with guys on the line who haven't been there?
Yeah, I mean, you just got to be smart with it, especially guys who haven't played in the NFL game before too. Sure. So it's not just being new, but it's it's also dealing. I mean, it's they're from Arizona's practice squad, which was a different deal. But like, it's a huge challenge because to make a football play go, especially with the O-line, you got to have 11 guys tied together. You can't have one guy go the wrong way and think something's going to work. So the biggest thing to those guys is how hard they work just to study, like studying for a test. I mean, there's so much words that you have to study that, blocking patterns, running patterns, protection patterns, running plays, all the screens, the different cadences. If you sit there and do one cadence the whole game, you're going to get killed anyways. So you got to get used to the different ones we can do, the different tempos by the quarterback, all the different types of stuff, and then let alone when that's all said and done, you still got to play football and block an NFL player, and you hadn't been in an NFL game before. So that stuff can be a little nerve-wracking as the week goes because you don't know what to expect. But we worked with them hard, and the guy completely did as much on his own as he could, and that's why I was so pumped and proud of the 2 guys and how they did perform because, by the end of the first quarter, I was a lot more comfortable and realized that they were on their stuff and couldn't get too carried away, but they gave us a chance to win that game, and can't say enough good things about both of those guys.
Kyle, how would you evaluate your rookies this season? Obviously, you had Malik Mustafa and Dominique Pooney starting this season, and obviously Ricky Pearsall has had to deal with a lot of things, and he had a fantastic game this past week, 8 catches for 141 yards. Just how would you evaluate your 2024 rookie class?
Well, yeah, we were going into the draft thinking that we really didn't have to find a day one starter. We felt we had our starting guys, but we knew we wanted to hit on all these guys because we wanted some eventual starters, and we also wanted to improve the depth of our team. But we didn't think we were going to have the pressure on people right away to have to go. And then just a couple injuries at receiver, the injuries at guard that happened in the first week of camp, the injuries at safety, some of the things on the D-line, even the injuries at corner, kind of what's happened with Mooney this year. It got all these guys opportunities a little bit before we thought, and that's, it's always hard at first, but it's been good for them in the long run because I think all those guys have really jumped up to the challenge, taken advantage of the opportunity. I think the guys have shown that I'd like to say they are who we thought they were, as in you never know till you get someone, but you believe these guys are going to be able to play, and you hope you can develop them a little bit more and stuff. But sometimes you don't have that luxury, and when one guy gets hurt, you got to go. And it's a credit to all of these guys because they were working their tails off this offseason. They jumped at the opportunity, didn't hesitate, and I think all of them have gone better throughout this year, and that'll come to serve us well in the future.
Yeah, it was cool to see Ricky. I think it's always cool as a fan when you see a player who you haven't seen do something, especially a new guy like Ricky Pearsall. You see, like, okay, that's a ceiling game. Now we know what's in there. We know what he's capable of. We just hadn't seen that performance yet. And, I mean, you've talked about it with us throughout the year. It's why you draft him when you draft him. But when he has a game like he had a couple of weeks ago with the pre-snap penalties and there was visible frustration, how big of a deal is it for him to be able to perform after a couple of mental mistakes like that? Is that growth? Is that development?
I think it's just not getting too down and wiping. I mean, all that stuff happens all the time.
Sure.
But when it happens on a big play in the game, and then cameras catch a coach getting on you, then it's going to get blown up a lot. I mean, you guys know, I'm sure, whether you've played Pop Warner football, college football, any high school, I mean, that's part of sports, and that stuff happens all the time. But when it happens on this stage, it's a bigger deal, and sometimes people can go into a shell over it, and they stop working through things and getting better. And so I think that's the best sign. It just shows the type of guy Ricky is. I mean, that didn't stress him out. That was water under the bridge the next day, and he came to practice and got to work, kind of like he always does. And that's kind of what I really can't say enough about Ricky, that I don't think people realize that. I was talking about all those other rookies and how hard they worked this offseason. Right when they got here, throughout phase 3, all of OTAs, staying around here in the summer when the coaches go away, what they do throughout training camp to kind of just get an idea, so if there ever is an injury, they're ready to go. And then they kind of make their way on special teams and in backup roles until that moment. And what people don't realize about Ricky is he got about 2 OTA practices in and then got hurt in OTAs. And then he pulled his hamstring when he was away for the summer, and he came back and was out the first couple of weeks of training camp. And then right when he got back in training camp, he hurt his shoulder on the first practice. And so he never got any OTAs or training camp. So if you go back to his time at Florida, he probably had about 3 NFL practices before he got shot in the chest. And so all those injuries happened, and he gets back a week before we're going to open up versus the Jets, and he gets 2.5 practices in and then gets shot the next day. And so fortunately, he was able to come back, and only miss a month. But when he came back, those were really his first practices. So, and we were needing him to play also. So I was so just proud of Ricky that he's been able to handle this year. He's been able to get through it. His body, like when you don't get to work all that stuff in a training camp, usually your body doesn't make it through the season. And he's fought through some wear and tear and been able to bounce through it and bounce back from it. And I've been just really proud of the type of guy he's shown us and the character he has, because we know he's got the ability. We saw his character. We see how tough he is, and I can't wait for him to get a full offseason in and come back next year firing on all cylinders.
So no Brock this Sunday. It's going to be Josh Dobbs starting for you guys, and I just wanted to know, with Brock's season done, what is something that really impressed you about him this season, and what's one thing you like for him to improve upon in 2025?
Well, I'm excited to, Brock to get away for a little bit, and him and I get back together and watch this whole season of tape where we can really just dissect it. Because this year, Brock's numbers and stuff aren't as good as his last 2 years, but of course they're not. He's been missing a starting left tackle. He's been missing an NFL MVP at running back. He's been missing the backup running back and the third string running back. He's been missing a starting X. He's had to go through a lot of stuff out there that's made this season much bigger of a challenge, where your numbers will change when that's the case. But I don't think Brock's playing much different than he has when he was killing it numbers-wise those 2 years. And so be able to watch him go through some adversity and be in some tougher situations. And, I think that's why he's had to scramble a little more. He's found ways to make some plays with his legs. He's had some tough games that he's had to bounce back from, which he always does. But I think Brock's had a hell of a year. There's always things that we can improve on, which we'll look into all that when we get back here in the offseason. But it's never, you always want everything to go right. But I do think when things aren't perfect and they seem like things aren't going the right way, I think sometimes in the long run it can be one of the best things that happen to you if you learn from it and get better. And this was the first season Brock had to go through where things weren't exactly right. The guys around him did get hurt. Our team wasn't quite as good. We were in some tougher situations, and to watch Brock go through that and handle it the way he did, just proves again, like he has for all 3 of these years, that we got the right guy.
Another minute here with 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan, Niners and the Cardinals this Sunday to wrap up the 2024 season. And just another offseason question for you. Do you ever because I hear, I would say pundits, I guess that's what we do too, but people talk about how coaches go about looking at tape in the offseason. How much do you look at other teams who are successful, other offenses, other plays, and then sort of conversely? Are you ever on the field and you're like, dude, that guy's running my play from 2 years ago? Like how much of that is cross-pollinated or goes into your game planning in the offseason?
You see people run. If you ran something one week, you're going to see, and it worked, you're going to watch probably 15 teams run it the next week.
Yeah.
That's just how the league works now. So, in the off season, we'll always do studies and stuff, and you get the top 5 red zone teams, top 5 short yardage, third down. You try to break it up in areas and study what they're doing differently. And very rarely is it because you found out some huge schematic thing that you've never seen before. Usually it's because, wow, they had a really good running back and they used the run game and had a number of good things off of it. It's pairing your personnel together. Man, they had a huge threat at quarterback here, and you see how much the defenses had to change to stop these things that they were doing because of the ability of the quarterback. And then you see the things that came off of it to open it up where that might not have been open for another team. So the more you learn is you learn how to try to find certain players, and when you do find those guys, how to use their abilities in all different types of ways. And but usually getting different types of skill sets is what unlocks different types of scheme.
So as a coach, how difficult is it to decide between resting players and doing what's best for the team than going for history? So like this weekend, Nick Sirianni is deciding to sit Saquon Barkley because it's best. They already have everything locked up, but he could go for Eric Dickinson's rushing record. And then I remember like in 1998, your father decided that, Terrell Davis should play in that last game to go for 2,000 yards. Even last year, Christian McCaffrey, that game's in hand against the Jacksonville Jaguars, but you guys wanted to go for the Lenny Moore record. How difficult is it to do what's best for the team, but also do what's best for the player chasing history?
I think it's real difficult because it's never a clean answer. It's like best for the team and best for the player. And what is best for the player?
Yeah.
Getting him the record or keeping him healthy?
Yeah.
And what if he can get the record and stay healthy? Well, that's the best thing for the player and the team. It's who knows what's going to happen. So you got to weigh all that stuff in. And even the Lions last week, they're in the same situation this week, whether they beat us or not. So it's you take that whole week off and they come out rusty, and they lose this week. Then it's then you're looking at it, man, that wasn't a good decision. But the fact that they played against us, they didn't seem, from what I checked, they didn't get anyone hurt. And if they go out and they play well versus Minnesota, that might be the reason why. And so you got to understand that, like, no matter what happens, if it doesn't work out, and it's a result-based business, and if it doesn't work out, you're going to look back and be like, oh, I guess in hindsight I should have gone the other way. But you got to look into everything always, and no, there's not an absolute decision. But you do need to do what's best for the team in terms of which is also best for the player, because I believe getting to the playoffs, having a chance to win a Super Bowl, I think is always better for players and the team than a record. And the records are a big deal, and they're especially one like the rushing record, because that's not just an individual record. That's huge for Saquon, but I know how much that means to a whole team, especially the O-lineman, but a whole team. I remember how big of a deal it was to my dad's team when Terrell did that in the last week. So I think so many things go into account, but I know if you end up losing a play, you gotta think, if we do lose this guy, do you feel you got a chance to still do what you're trying to accomplish? And if the answer is no, then you probably don't want to do it.
Well, were you there for that Terrell Davis game?
I was right there on the sidelines, and
that's pretty sick.
Yeah, we didn't think twice about it back then.
Yeah, dude, it's because a bulldozer. Just let him go.
Yeah, there was no way that he wasn't playing. I think the team would have revolted on my dad if that was the case back then. But I also do think it's a little different. Like, I can't tell you how hard it was for me last year. We clinched the division a week before we thought we would. And then which means we had a bye week, because not the division, we clinched the 1 seed. And man, I would love to rest guys because the game didn't mean much. But I also knew we were going to have a bye week. So if I rested our whole team, or as many people as I could that week, and then a bye week, I was like, man, now we got to go 2 weeks before with this. And I think that was one of the reasons that we struggled a little bit in those first 2 playoff games, or just got off to tough starts, because it wasn't just the bye week we were off. We took a lot off the week before, not playing some guys. But the thing that people don't realize in this sport too is and I've said it and I'm wrong, you can't rest the whole team. You got to get 48 guys out there, and you need 48 guys to get through a football game. And once you just make a coach's decision to rest 1 or 2 guys, go look at what that does to 12 other guys who feel like, hey, why aren't I resting too? Am I not important? And that's what you got to always take into account. So if someone's banged up, and then it makes it easy, but you don't have the luxury. You only can pick 7 guys.
That's good insight, man. We appreciate the conversation as always, Kyle. Have a great rest of the week and a safe trip out to Arizona. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, guys. Good
Thanks,
talking
man.
to you. Take care.
Thanks, Coach.
Yeah, good stuff there from Kyle Shanahan.